lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and today we're going to be doing another holiday-related comic book. Kind of an idea I had to do for the month of December. While it won't be every single day, we'll be seeing these holiday comic books. I do have a few lined up, and I decided why not start with Amazing Spider-Man 314. Now, Spider-Man's had a lot of holiday Christmas comic books over the years. I even have a couple more lined up to talk about on the channel, but I couldn't start with any other one other than a classic Todd McFarlane Spidey tale. And right off the bat, it tells you exactly what to expect. Peter and Mary Jane get evicted just in time for Christmas. And it actually happens on Christmas Eve. While this isn't, while I wouldn't say this is one of the most remembered Todd McFarlane Spidey comics, obviously issue 300 or Spider-Man 1 or the X-Force crossover, probably more memorable. But in my research, looking for Christmas stuff, for Christmas comic books to talk about, holiday comic books to talk about, this one popped up. I don't even really remember reading it ever before. I mean, maybe I read it in trade, but as I read it again, prior to this episode, it definitely was a new reading experience, and absolutely loved it. This is an era of Spider-Man that I'm very fond of. Late '80s, early '90s. This is my childhood Spidey. This is the Spidey I remember. Married to Mary Jane. Still a photographer at the Bugle, stuff like that. So right off the bat, let me just read the credits before we jump in. David Michelini's a writer, Todd McFarlane's an artist, Rick Parker letterer, Bob Sharon is a colorist. We got Jim Salicrup as the editor, and Tom DeFalco was editor-in-chief at the time. Like I said, right off the bat, first panel we see, Peter and MJ get evicted. One of the things I love about McFarlane is how expressive his faces are. While I have often said some of his faces aren't exactly the best, I do think that he definitely is very expressive, puts a lot of detail into his faces. And, I mean, you can just see sleazebag lawyer, to Aunt May, the way he draws MJ, which I really love as well. This all leads from a story arc prior that was in issues 304 to 309. It's been a while since I've read him, so I don't know off the top of my head. He does talk about... I'm probably going to go back and read these. It wasn't too important in terms of being able to pick up this comic book and read it by itself. Completely, pretty much self-contained for the most part. And that's another thing that I miss about these days. You could pick up any comic book and feel like you got your money's worth. Feel like you got a complete story. As we go in, and obviously Aunt May's worried, tells her that they can stay at her place. Peter says, "Oh, we already have a place to stay." MJ obviously is questioning that because they just found out they were evicted. So how could they possibly already have a place to stay? And next up's where we meet the store manager, and he's being forced to work by this corporate guy that doesn't understand why the scheduling Christmas Eve on their busiest days on a Saturday. I mean, it's just just speaking to corporate America and the greed and how he's had to work. He says, "Oh, you've worked your 19th Christmas for me." He said, "Actually, it's the 23rd without even overtime." But who's counting, kind of, And he said he's going to find this holiday especially rewarding, and we see he's got a gun in his briefcase and intends to do something about it, right? As we go forward, we see, Peter sends Aunt May on her way, and we got the moving company hauling all their stuff. Peter's going to try to drop by the Daily Bugle, try to get some photo assignments. This is what I loved about him. He was a freelance photographer, and that's how he made his money. And he made money selling pictures of himself. And I really miss that aspect of the Spider-Man and Peter Parker dynamic that we don't get anymore. Also, what I'm loving too is Todd's use of the paneling here, showing the cityscape with the panels overlapping the city. And they got to try to figure out where they're going to stay now. Peter has no idea what to tell her. saying why he told Ma that he overreacted and said he was trying to avoid. He said he's grown out of living without me, and he doesn't want to have to go back. And she's telling him, if you want to prove you're a grown up, so that we're out on the street on Christmas Eve, I suppose things can be worse. A mugging's happening, and Peter's, he knows he's got to, but he can't. Like, he's still trying to figure out how does he save himself? Where do they go from here? Where does this couple go? And get a nice little Spidey shot. Another, one of the things I've often said I loved about this was, Todd's detail that he puts in, and between the spaghetti webbing and the posing that he does with Spidey, it's really some of the best. And I love the dialogue here, how he wishes somebody else got bit by the spider. He says Chuck Norris, Mike Tyson, or Bridget Nielsen, because they have broader shoulders. Thought that was pretty funny. Again, the use of detail, how he's webbing up this mugger, and the snappy dialogue that David Michelini has for Peter Parker is that trademark humor that he does as he's fighting crime. Even in the small panels, we see Spidey just like, there's no wasted line in his art. Again, another dynamic pose as he's swinging out of the scene. I love McFarlane's depiction of J. Jonah Jameson too. Just the close-up shot, that smug grin when Peter's asking him if they've got any photography work so he can make some money. And then he tells him to go enjoy the Christmas party because, after all, it's a deductible. Always worried about the bottom line, trying to make his money, Thinking who should he ask to stay. Thinks of Joe and Martha Robinson, but he doesn't want to ask them. Joy Mercado, she's going to cause drama, because of jealousy with MJ. Thinks, just as he thinks maybe Jonah, he thinks never mind after he gets that response. Goes and pays a visit to Flash Thompson. Flash, without even being asked, offered to help Peter. And I like that too, anybody that's familiar with, Spider-Man knows that there was a lot of animosity between Flash and Peter. In high school, Flash used to bully Peter, but along the way they become friends and they move past that as they become adults. And I really loved where Flash Thompson's story ends up in more recent history, in more recent memory. But I won't get into that right now. And here we go back to the department store manager, and we see that crime being committed, and he says, "Don't worry, it's Christmas after all." And he puts a gun against the department store manager. And we jump back again to Peter. He's paying his respects to Uncle Ben. He's asking for advice, and I love this single page spread, single panel. It's just such a powerful image, and even with the shadow covering his eyes, you can just see he's feeling a little defeated, and that's always the Peter, the Parker luck they call it, right? Like, he's always got bad luck. There's always something happening, and this is just yet another thing, and of course it happens on Christmas Eve. And back to the store manager, and he's deciding, like, after all these years of having to endure, he thinks the Christmas profits will do nicely. And we see one of the security guards notices that these aren't real security guards and asks what's going on. And the guys that are stealing all the loot hold the department store Santa hostage at gunpoint. And as they're driving off, Peter hears the sirens and knows that no matter what he's got going on, he's still him, and he's got to help save the day. I love this too, how he's laying across and just peeks his head over. I think that's a really cool use. I don't think I see that very often in Spidey comics, where he's just, it's just such a weird pose for him to just swing and then just be laying down and hanging over the hood of the car. And obviously Spidey's going to make quick work of this because we're nearing the end. We're nearing the end of this issue. He makes quick work of all the criminals, webs them up to the tree, ties them up to one of the tombstones, and we're back at the cemetery where he was just, where he was grieving with his uncle, asking for advice, and we get this visceral image that is just signature McFarlane. You can see like the curvature in the bones and the way he's holding his hands, the big white eyes. another close up of his hand, and that's one thing I think Todd is really good at. The way he composes his hands in the panels. And as the manager has the gun pointed at Spidey, we see the store manager gets knocked out. And who but Santa Claus comes to his aid, and I love it. He says, even as he thanks Santa, don't mention us heroes got to stick together. This is just such a kind of like a little heartwarming story, something that we don't see often enough between like everybody writing for a trade paperback or crossovers and stuff. We just don't get these like one and done issues anymore in the ongoing series. Every once in a while we'll get a one shot issue of stuff like this, but it just makes me miss the days of like when I was a kid and we got comics like this, because you're able to tell a compelling story full of heart, full of humor, runs the gamut of emotions, and it's just a fun read, and anybody can pick this up and just enjoy it. And as he's getting his clothes back on after he stops the crime, he sees Aunt May, and she's at the cemetery for the same reason, to pay her respects and share a special moment with her husband. And Peter confides in her and thinks, maybe I can do this for Aunt May. Maybe I can swallow my pride, and maybe it would help her too for him to be at home with her. And as we end the issue, we get a nice, heartwarming family moment with MJ, talking her in on the phone. We got MJ's cousin Christy, and Peter whispers to MJ that he thinks Aunt May is the happiest person on earth right now, and MJ says that I guess that makes me the second, and how proud she is of Peter. Pretty key issue happens in the next one. That's when Venom makes his return in issue 315. But yeah, that was Amazing Spider-Man 314 by Dave Michelini, Todd McFarlane. Another great Spidey issue from this fantastic run that Michelini and McFarlane did together. I loved it. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Stay tuned for more holiday comics that I will be continuing to cover on the channel throughout this month. And if you're not already following us, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. Throw your comments or suggestions down below, or you can email us, thecomicloungepod@gmail.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you're notified every time a new episode goes up. And on that note, I'm out.